and I don't remember the other picture that I thought about.
You fell in love with this one.
But I thought this one was precious because, you know, it looked to me like there was tremendous expectation. Thomas Sully was apprenticed to an insurance broker. And the insurance broker who took him under his wing to teach him the trade, I think his job was to deal with figures and accounting and keep up with different things related to the insurance that he sold and the premiums. And his comment is that he paid him, or he was training him to, keep up with the figures, and that what he kept seeing on the sheets of paper were actually figures, but they were figures of people and faces and pictures of people. His father and mother were in the theater. They came over from London and did theater in the United States in the early period of time. He had a brother that was a portrait painter. He painted miniatures. How many of us in here think that we could paint this if we just had enough time? Are there any artists in the room? Anyone? So, are you saying that you could not be nurtured into painting this? What if you started when you were 14 and you had a very encouraging set of parents? Anybody ever take piano? Anyone ever sit at a piano bench and cry like I did because mother loved piano? Did you take piano?
I did.
And at whose urging was it?
My mother's urging.
Did it take?
No. I mean, I did it for many years, but it never took.
Never took.
I never really advanced beyond a very elemental level.
Was there anyone else in the family that played piano, played well?
Not really.
Your brother played music.
He did play music later, right? He did as a child, though.
I think you need to have some semblance of a right brain. And there are those of us that just got left out. We're just totally analytical and boring and can appreciate people that are creative and all. And I mean, maybe I'm slightly exaggerating, but not much. I mean, art, music, things like that, I really love, but I just don't have any aptitude. And maybe my parents even knew that and didn't particularly encourage me to play the piano because everybody would have left the house probably. But yeah, I love art and I love music.
And where does that come from?
I guess having been exposed to it and liking it.
So how was your exposure? How do you remember being exposed to art? What circumstances were you in, or that do you recall?
I remember taking an art history course at the University of Tennessee, and that sort of opened my eyes to it. And and I didn't really pursue it until when I retired and came back here. And the Hunter is obviously an incredible place, and like you, when I travel now, I always go to the museums and all. But I would say it was that college course that really got me started on appreciating it.
I'm a graphic designer, so I think that's technically an artist. In some sense, my grandfather's a graphic designer, and I've taken painting classes and things like that. So I know I can't do that because I've tried doing painting classes, and that style is not the kind that I would want to spend time on. But not that I don't appreciate that, but I'm more of a plein air painter, I guess, than that.
It's interesting, you're saying that you're a graphic designer and you have another family member that's a graphic designer. So is that how you got interested in this, or what influence did that play in your taking that up?
I remember growing up and seeing him always doing graphic design and drawing stuff, and I wanted to do that. But I don't think I knew he was a graphic designer. I just thought he drew stuff. I didn't know what he was doing. And then when I told him I wanted to be a graphic designer, then I discovered that's what he is. It wasn't like, I don't know if I knew what he was exactly.
So Do you have, would you say that you, I mean, it sounds like you have an artistic inclination and that you
Mhm.
actually had, how did you know that's what you wanted to do and when did you know it?
I think it's as simple as it's what I love to do. And every day I enjoy doing it. And,
How early did it start? Was it first grade, second grade? That there were things that were associated with that?
I mean, I was doing stuff in preschool.
Preschool?
Not graphic design, but I was always the kid that was doing different ornaments when we'd have to paint ornaments at Christmas time, or I'd draw sports logos instead of enjoying sports. I liked playing sports, but it was always fun to draw the logos of the hockey teams as opposed to watch hockey.
I'll recount what I think a lot of the artists are. My uncle was a lifetime artist, and you can't find anything around their house that he didn't draw on from, as soon as he was able to get something in his hand to draw, he was drawing, and everything around the grandparents' house he drew on, and he ornamented, he drew sketches for the high school annual, and it's just full of them. So he just started sketching and never stopped.
Do you have any of that ability?
I don't sketch at all.
Don't sketch at all. What do you do?
I do 3D photography. That's a different thing.
Nature or nurture? I mean, when you do something like this, what is it more of? Is it more of any one thing? Is it more your genetic inborn talent? Or is it more that you have been trained? Or is it an exactly equal portion? What do you think? Because we're not going to come up with the exact answer tonight.
The good ones start when they're 3. Whether they're singing or playing chess or whatever, they start off, most of them start off and they're doing it from the ability to move.
My mom played the piano and she wanted to major in voice. And she's 85, still plays today. When her grandson was born, he would sit on her lap in front of the piano, and she was playing one day, and he was not even a year old, and she could hear him on tempo with the piano, and she thought that odd, and I thought that odd too, that someone that really couldn't speak yet could somehow or another picked up the tempo.
I think there's definitely nurturing involved, but yeah, I tend to believe it's, whether it's genetic or whatnot, I think it's by nature.
Oh, and isn't this painting in some ways, I hadn't thought about it this way, but arguing for both, because the child is growing up in an environment where he would be a patriot because of his grandfather, but at the same time it was born within him. He was in a home of wealth that could afford this, and he was in a home of other patriots. So there's both nature and nurture at play here. So that perhaps both have to be there in order for someone to reach their full bloom.
Even if you have sort of the predisposition,
Yeah.
sometimes someone needs to point you in that direction or
You have to have a love
encourage
for
you.
it and then go through the nurturing.
What are the expectations? What do you see as the expectations for this child? Is it about expectations? Maybe I presume too much. Is there an expectation?
I think he's going to Harvard. He's probably going to be a lawyer.
I think you've got some evidence there. Do you see the parents expecting this child to learn to read?
Mm-hmm.
Even if he doesn't know now? Someday you will? Is the expectation with this cane that he will work down at the docks, loading and unloading?
They're two different things. The one is your ability to do the mechanisms of, you're a bricklayer. You lay bricks, you learn to lay bricks, and anybody can learn to lay bricks. Another is being a really good bricklayer. And that's where I think you get more of the nature, being a good piano player versus someone who can be trained enough to do something where people don't run out of the room. I mean, you know, that's nurture. I mean, you know, if you're if your father was a shop owner and your grandfather was a shop owner, it's highly likely you will be a shop owner. And if they weren't, it's highly unlikely that you will be. I mean, you know, but you might not be a good shop owner, mind you. You know, if you look at most things in families where you have a business, you know, somebody starts off and it's a great business, and the next generation it's a little bit less.
Mm-hmm.
The next generation they sell it off to somebody else. So I think that it depends on what level of expectation, you know, you're looking at. If you're a basketball player, you may be able to play on the high school team, but that doesn't mean you're going to get a ring.
Can you take a child who's never been to a symphony and take them to a symphony and let them hear the music and enter them into band, even if mother and dad cannot play anything? Could that be the next virtuosa
Yeah.
on an instrument?
Well, I mean, it depends on the parents. I have a friend who's an excellent piano player. His dad wanted him to play baseball, but he hated baseball. And he realized he'd rather go to the library and read or go to the museum. So his father nurtured him that way instead. And he found what his nature was and then nurtured it, it seemed like. So maybe the nature does come first and the nurturing comes second. I don't know.
Parents being willing to let their children be individuals
Mhm.
that diverge maybe from the path that they see for them.
Is
And
that easy?
exploring creativity. No,
Is that
not at
easy?
all. No.
Where
Right,
you
yes.
obviously have
Well,
seen.
I think my background is in education, and we teach how we're taught. You know, so your access and your exposure to things, of course, is going to bias what you expose your children to. And so I think giving them the freedom to kind of explore some other options is difficult, but it can be really, I think, beneficial for that child trying to navigate their own path.
Why is that so difficult for a parent?
It's hard to nurture something that's not
Yeah.
their nature.
It's unknown to them, you know, as well as to the
And
child.
and what do parents do even before children come into the world?
Expectations.
What is your expectation, and how long does a parent have to form their expectations before that child actually comes to a point where they're supposed to do something that either follows that path or goes somewhere else? How many of us went directly down the path that our parents had in mind for us early on? They had the expectation. Was it their expectation based on what they wanted you to do or what they thought your inclination was?
I think it was more what I thought they wanted me to do than, like, my dad wrestled, so I'll try wrestling. Or he did this, but then I just decided that's not what I wanted to do, so then I went off into graphic design.
So, but you were exposed to it.
But I
which
was
a good
exposed
thing,
to
right?
that. Yeah, I was exposed
Even
to
if
that.
you decide not to do something for forever.
But I think as a parent, you have to be willing to redefine what it means to be successful so that you can adjust that expectation. Because success may look different for your child than it does for you.